So we're going to start with worksheet number 1 of the lymphatic system. The first question, have you guys, if you've gone through it, what is not a function of lymph? And so lymph absorbs lipids from the digestive system. So that's something that's actually kind of interesting that a lot of people don't think about. It's in the digestive system and it absorbs lipids, which are fats. Lymph also defends the body against diseases. So this is with immunity, this is when it comes, because you have the lymphatic system and the immune system. If you think about the lymphatic system is like the location of your lymph nodes and like the anatomy of it. But the immune system is like the physiology, like what does the lymphatic system do? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So it defends the body. Lymph also transports interstitial fluid from the interstitial spaces to the bloodstream. And basically interstitial, do you guys know what interstitial spaces are?
Spaces in the tissues.
Yeah, so it's from the tissues. And that's just, it just regulates fluid balance. So what happens when you have too much fluid in your tissues? What is that called? Edema, yep. So one of the things that lymph does not do is transport nutrients to the tissues, and it removes waste. This is the cardiovascular system. This is what your blood does. Your blood transports waste and nutrients, but lymph transports lipids. So think of lipids, lymph, they both start with L's. Next one is lymphatic system carries fluid from the bloodstream into the interstitial spaces. This is false. The lymphatic system actually carries fluid from the interstitial spaces into the bloodstream. So it goes from tissue to blood, right? Because we want to prevent edema. So that's a good way you can think about it. Too much fluid in your tissues causes edema. We want to prevent that. So the lymphatic system functions to move the fluid from the tissues into the bloodstream. Does that make sense? This is something, lymphatic capillaries, the fluid from there go to the subclavian veins in the thorax. And where is the thorax? Yeah, your thoracic cavity, but more so of I wish I put a picture up here. So it's in your thorax, but it is more up here. So it is the veins, like in more of your shoulder areas. Yeah. So here's a subclavian vein. Because so when you think about in Latin, you have sub, which means under, clavian, which means clavicle. So it is under your clavicle, subclavian. What is true of lymphatic capillaries? Thick wall, so I think this is a fill in the blank, isn't it? Okay. Thick walls provide easy diffusion of tissue fluid. Closed-ended tubes with a very small diameter. And this is comparing lymphatic capillaries to like blood capillaries. So they have very small diameter, while blood capillaries have a bigger diameter. Lymphatic capillaries have thick walls that gives it easy diffusion. And then they are found.
I think the red words are wrong.
Yeah,
The red
what is
words are
wrong?
wrong.
Yeah, because I'm looking at this, yeah.
So which one is true, and they merge into larger lymph vessels.
Right. Oh, which is what is true. Why did I highlight these? Are they?
Because those are wrong, and then in red you.
Oh, I thought those were fill in the blank, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, thick walls.
Yeah.
No, I see.
You're pointing out what's false about it. Because
Right.
They're thin walled and they're a bigger diameter.
Yeah.
And they're not found in the central nervous system.
Yeah.
But they do merge into the larger lymph vessels, so.
Gotcha.
that's the
I was thinking it was fill in the blank, and I was like, these are true, and I was like, yeah, okay. So what is false, I'm sorry, so it's asking what is true. I got mixed up because I thought these red were fill in the blank. What is false is that thick walls, it's thin walls. Thin walls are the things that provide easy diffusion, because the thinner the wall is, the easier liquid can go through. Lymph capillaries are closed-ended tubes, but they have a very large diameter. And this allows them to, because with capillaries, very small, like blood capillaries. So, you understand that? Okay.
It's moving from a smaller space with more pressure into a larger space that has less pressure. So that's what causes the diffusion.
Yes. And then lymph capillaries are not found in the CNS. If it was, it would like attack our brain, and we don't want that in our CNS.
Is there any way you could like dim the lights just up there a little bit?
I can just turn them on. Does that work? Is that better?
No.
Oh,
Yes.
is it okay? Do I need to make this? I'll make it bigger, maybe. I don't know.
We had old people in this class.
I know, and I forget these things. I'm sorry. maybe I should.
no, huh?
All right. So lymph capillaries are never found in the CNS. They do merge into larger lymph vessels, and then lymph capillaries are made up of simple squamous epithelium. And why is it simple squamous versus this one that's wrong? This is incorrect. What this should say is squamous. So why are lymph capillaries simple squamous?
So the material can diffuse into the capillaries.
Yeah, because the thinner the layer, the easier water can diffuse through. But if it's cuboidal, that's not going to work out. So that's that. Lymph, it says this one's a little bit of a trick question. It's asking lymph nodes are found in the digestive system and absorb dietary fats. This is false. They're not actually lymph nodes, they're called lacteals. These are found in the villi of the small intestine, and the villi, like those little finger-like projections, right, that pick things up, right, from the digestive system. This was quite a while ago. And they function to absorb lipids out of the digestive system into the bloodstream. So that's how we get a lot of our dietary fats, is through lacteals. So this is interesting. Lymph vessels, like veins, contain semilunar valves to prevent backflow. So if you think about lymph vessels and veins, right? So what's the difference between so a vein has valve-like flaps, but does an artery have it? Mm-mm. So if the heart is what pumps blood through your arteries, what is it that gets the blood to move in your veins? Breathing, that's one, yeah. What's another one?
Movement.
Yeah, movement, like exercise, right?
Skeletal muscles.
Mm-hmm. And something that you can help apply to this is that usually people who are sedentary, people who don't move around a whole lot, they're not circulating that lymph fluid inside of them. They're not pushing those, the immune system around in their body. And if it's not being pushed around, if they're not exercising, if they're not moving, they get sick. Does that make sense? So exercise is really good for preventing, spider veins, but it's also really good for your immune system because you get it to circulate. Because your lymph doesn't have a heart. Your lymph is pretty much, not moving in your body, static. I don't know how else. Am I making sense? Okay. Are you doing okay, Debbie? Okay. Two functions of lymph nodes. They clean and filter lymph fluid. So they're just like the filters. And then they also produce lymphocytes. So when you get sick, what's something that what do your lymph nodes do?
Swell.
They swell, right? So swelling is like when they get bigger, right? They get bigger because there's more fluid, there's more cells that it's trying to filter out. So that's why it gets bigger. It produces and distributes lymphocytes. Basically, that's where lymphocytes, like your T cells and your B cells, are made. So if you're making a whole lot, it's going to swell up. So this is a true-false. The subclavian trunk drains lymph from the legs, lower abdomen wall, and pelvic organs. This is false because what is subclavian? Yeah, subclavian. So sub meaning under, clavian meaning your clavicle. So it's up here. It doesn't drain from the abdomen or the legs. It's not, anatomically. But the lumbar is what drains it. So your lumbar is like your lower back. So that's what drains it into the abdomen and pelvic organs. Collecting ducts. Lymphatic collecting ducts, largest lymph vessels, that is true. Two main collection ducts is the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. So this gives more information on that. You can look through that. Oh, this is fun. Okay, so when you have, sorry, this first part's kind of boring because it's just basic information. So I feel like I'm like yelling at you. Let's see. Blood plasma becomes tissue fluid. Okay. So this is the order. I don't know if this is in a quiz or something, but I know this is important. So fluid in your blood is known as blood plasma. It then becomes tissue fluid in your tissues and lymph. So when you're thinking about this, what is the difference between blood plasma and tissue fluid? The liquid portion is the same, but blood plasma has
proteins.
This is plasma proteins. So blood plasma has plasma proteins and fluid. Tissue fluid just has the fluid. It doesn't have plasma proteins. And then what is the difference between tissue fluid and lymphatic fluid, or lymph?
Yes, fats and lipids.
But basically they both do. The thing is that the difference between tissue fluid and lymph is that it is the same fluid, it's just different locations. So when it's in your tissues, like when it's in your skin or when it's in your organs, it's known as tissue fluid. But when it's in your lymph nodes and your lymph vessels, it's known as lymphatic. Does that make sense? So it's chemically, tissue fluid and lymphatic fluid are the same thing. I don't know if I got that enough. Okay, I'm just making sure I can record that. I'm not sure if it's picking up pink. Does that make sense? It's just the location. Okay. So blood plasma has a large plasma proteins in it. Tissue fluid has no plasma proteins. That's true. Because what do plasma proteins do? Water follows salts. Water follows solutes. Plasma protein is a solid, right? If we want to prevent edema from happening, we need to somehow move fluid from the tissues, right? Because that's edema, is too much fluid in the tissues. We need to move fluid from the tissues into the blood. And the way that we move the tissue fluid into the blood is those plasma proteins in the blood is pulling the fluid into the blood. Does that make sense? So that's why plasma proteins, they actually pull the fluid. Because we want fluid in our blood. We need blood pressure, We don't want it in our tissues because that will cause edema. And it goes either way, but that's just a good way to.
So are you saying if your blood pressure's low, you get edema? Is that,
Yeah, you can.
okay.
Yeah, that's actually when you have heart failure, you do get edema. So if you're, that's very, I like that, yeah.
Okay.
But you can also get edema if you just have you can also have it if you have high blood pressure because you have too much fluid inside your body, like you're not peeing enough out. You can also get edema that way too. Just an overflow, like you get all like puffy, like that.
And that renal failure thing?
Yeah. Now we're back to pressure. So osmotic pressure maintains, osmotic pressure maintenance in blood capillaries is the reason why plasma proteins do not leave the bloodstream. This is true because we want whenever there is a solute, right, because plasma proteins are a solute, they're a solid. This is solute. That's going to maintain osmotic pressure. Osmotic pressure. Does that make sense? The pressure is osmotic. That's important in this chapter. Lymph, so what about this next one? Lymph and tissue fluid are chemically unalike.
False.
That's false, right. They are identical. The only difference is what?
Location.
Yep. Lymph fluid prevents edema. This is also known as excess accumulation of fluid in the tissues, right? And then this next one, fluid leaves at the arterial end of the capillary because of more hydrostatic pressure. Now let's break this down. What is hydrostatic pressure?
The water pressure in the arterial capillaries.
I'm going to erase this, okay? So when you have, I think this was in one of the other worksheets that we did in the cardiovascular system, but hydrostatic pressure, so is hydrostatic pressure moving water in or out of the capillaries? Out. So something that causes, right, because it goes from arteries to veins, right? That's the movement of blood. So what is something that causes hydrostatic pressure?
Higher blood pressure.
Higher blood pressure. What causes high blood pressure?
Too much salt.
Too much fluid, too much salt, also your heart. It's pushing that fluid out. So a good way you can remember hydrostatic pressure is high near the heart because the heart is pushing fluid out of your arteries. But yeah, it is from what you guys said is valid too, but that's just a way to remember it. So fluid leaves at the arterial end, right? Because the arteries are closer to the heart, right? Your veins are like all in your legs and everything. Your arteries are right there. Your aortic, it's pushing fluid out. So there's more hydrostatic pressure closer to the heart, and this is what will cause water to leave. This next one, fluid enters at the venous end of the capillary because, does that make sense? That first one we went through with hydrostatic pressure? Okay. So fluid leaves at the arterial end. But what at the venous end, so this is, I'm just drawing these smaller because the fluid is leaving, right? But fluid enters at the venous end. So this is just, I think this was in your cardiovascular, one of them. This is because there's more osmotic pressure than hydrostatic pressure. And this is due to a higher concentration of proteins. So if you think about it, so the fluid movement changes throughout your body, but what is one thing that doesn't change? you got your fluid, and then you have your plasma proteins, right? So fluid. Fluid movement changes, it fluctuates, but plasma proteins are the same. At least they should be. So if you're over here and you have 3 plasma proteins, there's more hydrostatic pressure from the heart and the water's being pushed out. But when you're in the venous end, it's more concentrated. And if it's more concentrated, where's water going to move? It's going to move into the vein because the concentration is what pulls fluid out of your tissues into the blood.
So proteins are like a magnet; it attracts the water.
Yeah, that's a good way to go about it. You come up with like good analogies. I like that's helpful. It's really helpful because I know what I'm trying to say, but don't know.
We have to try to work together
Yeah,
and put it in terms that
so
we
they're
can
like
understand.
magnets. So the magnetic power, so to speak, is more stronger in the venous end. And this will cause water to come in. We already went through this. Cardiovascular system uses the heart. Lymphatic system uses muscle activity, so exercise. This is why lymphatic flow is higher during physical exercise. Okay? And this can be from contracting skeletal muscles, breathing, respiratory, or smooth muscle movement. So those are all muscles. Muscle movement is what causes lymph.